Hey everyone, in this video we'll be looking at NextJS 13's data fetching techniques, which are a little different compared to NextJS 12 or the older versions of NextJS. So let's start off. I'll be starting off with creating a new NextJS app with the experimental tab for the NextJS 13 implementation. And let's just call it something else. I was just trying it out before so that I don't make any mistakes over here. Fetching data, I'll use TypeScript, fine by me. I'll use ESLint with this project, sure. I don't need the SRC directory, alias is fine by me. Till the time this loads, I'll open up my browser. Okay, so we have this now. So to start off with, I'll open the app/page.tsx. You can use the VS Code to follow along, and also if you're using JavaScript, that's fine. I'll just be adding a few types here in a few places, but you can just ignore them if you're using JavaScript. So let's just start off by starting off the development server. If I open localhost 3000, it will start off with the new. I just started this one. How did I get a hydration failure already? Okay, that's fine, I think. That was weird. Okay. So we're up and running with NextJS 13. Inside, I'll create a new route inside my app directory. Let's call this post.ts, post/page.tsx, alright? I'll call this export default function post page, or just post is fine. I'll return a div which has that. Alright, I'll just go to /posts and we will have that over here. I'll use the enter over here because this is a little annoying. Let's import the function and we can just give this a class name of enter.classname. Alright, we have this now. I think I'm zoomed in way too much. Yeah, okay. Note the fact that this is a server component, alright? So I can have a function over here which says const get data or get posts. I'll be getting the post from the JSON placeholder API. I can just say const post or just say const data is equal to await. Well, that I can just say const post is await data.json. Now I can return these posts over here. Now this needs to be asynchronous. Now this works, but the posts don't have any type. Now if you're using TypeScript, then only this is needed, else you can ignore this. I can just say lib/types.ts. I can say interface post. I'm not sure what this returns. I don't remember what this returns. Okay. Anyways, I can now call that get post function inside this component. I can say const post is equal to get post. But there's an issue. If I just console.log out post right now, you will see an issue over here, right? This is a promise. I don't need a promise. I can't await this inside here. Or can we? NextJS 13 with server components can have this function to be asynchronous. So your components can now be asynchronous. So you can just say await gets post and that will work. So if I console.log the post now, see that? So now you have all the posts coming in from the API. I can type this now. So this has a user ID, which is a number, ID, which is a number, title, which is a string, and body, which is a string. All right. I can see that this function returns a promise with the list of posts. I just try to list this out. Let's go post.map through each post. Does it work? Let's just return an li with a key of post.id. Well, it seems to be working. How is this imported into this? You know what? I'll import it anyways. Post from dot slash, sorry, add slash lib slash types. I am confused. Oh, this needs to be exported. And my language server seems to be doing something very weird here. But now I can just go and import this from the types. Okay. So now this knows that this is a type. Post, a list of posts. So I will get autocomplete for this the proper way. And my language server seems to just get it anyways. I don't know why. But yeah, anyways, I can see post.title in here and this will work. Alright. If I just zoom out a bit, you can see that all the posts are being rendered over here. Good enough? Now, just getting a little more deeper into this, if the data coming from this API route changes, the data which is being showed here will not change. I'll show you an example of how that is happening. I'll just have another component inside this post called com.tsx, and also with server components, now you can use data fetching anywhere, even if you're using SSR. I'll talk about it a little deeper in a second, but I can just say export default function com and say return a div which says let's say something like return a p tag. It says something like hello world, but I want some name to be shown here. So what I can do is use the new API routes inside NextJS 13, which came out in NextJS 13.2. You can just change this to nextresponse.json. I'll say it is a name which returns my name. Alright. Now, if I go to localhost 3000 slash API slash hello, it will have a JSON response with name as the value as current. So what I can do is I can fetch this in here. Do that. I will have another function inside here called get name. Again, an asynchronous function returns a promise of string because I want to return the name. I can get this, but I will change this fetch over here. I will change this over here as well. I will say return name. So I actually was thinking that API slash hello will work, but apparently it doesn't because so I'll just show you how. So if I call the com function inside com component inside this page.tsx, if I refresh this, wait, what? Yeah, I'm not calling this function yet. If I just call this function by making this asynchronous, and if I say cons name is equal to await get name and say this is name, look at what happens here. Apparently the new fetch API doesn't have relative importing. So just make this HTTP localhost 3000 slash API slash hello. You can get this from your process.env. Alright, objects are not valid as React child component. Why is this happening? Oh, right. I need to destructure this. This is a JSON. I'll just get name. And now we have hello come. Alright, that works. And just note this error which is coming here. It's return type of promise element. There's an issue with NextJS 13. Even though not NextJS 13 but React's new RSC. Even though this is this is returning a promise of an element, but every JSX element inside your component has to be a JSX an element and not a promise element. So it's not fixed yet, but you can just go add this TSX. I forgot what it is called. Next is 13, return type, promise element, some component, yeah. And copy this line over here. It just expects it to error and says, do not give me an error on that. Copy, paste, and it works. Now the thing is, if I change my route to say John Doe, see what happens here. This doesn't change. Why is it not changing? So by default, if we look at the NextJS 13 docs, if I look at data fetching here and look at static data fetching, by default, fetch will automatically fetch and cache data indefinitely. It has this object over here as the second parameter, which has a cache, which by default is something called force cache, which basically says cache this data forever. So you don't even need to add this here, and this works something like SSD. But the difference between SSD and this is that this doesn't fetch that data at build time. SSD or static site generation in the pages directory used to fetch that data at build time. You can emulate that with dynamic params. I'll show that in a second, but you can't do that directly inside a top level a component or a page. Right? You don't need the second this. But like, how do I make it change now? I can't make it change, right? So this is John Doe, but why is it not showing John Doe? So if you have dynamically changing data, you will use something like an SSR, like a server-side rendered fetching. Um, so how that works is let me just add another directory here, which says SSR post stage.ts. All right. Okay. I'll just copy this whole thing and paste this in over here again. Obviously, comp doesn't exist, and that is actually what we need to exist. All right. Now, if I save this as well, let's see, this should work. If I just go to SSR dashboards, this works just like we wanted, but it's still not showing John Doe. And for a matter of fact, I'll just show you that it should be John Doe now by going to localhost 3000/API/. It is John Doe, but it's not showing me John Doe over here. How do I do that? I tell NextJS fetch API that I don't want you to cache this. This data just changes a lot of times for me. I don't want you to cache it. I just say cache and I set it to no cache. And now every time you change this, now if I change this back to say Jane Doe, this will change. But now, even if I go to localhost 3000/post, it is still coming. That is the difference between caching and no caching. All right. Now, let's look at how data fetching works inside client components. All right. So if I have a client post, all right. Now, this is marked it as a client component by saying that, and I say export. Let me actually copy paste the whole thing. Let me actually copy paste the whole directory. I'll just say cd app cp-r post as client post, and I should have that over here now. Now I can mark this as a client component by saying use client over here. Well, I don't even need to mark this as use client. I just want to show that this is a client component, and well, I'll show in both the places. You can have, by the way, you can have a client component inside a server component, but you can't have a server component inside a client component. To do that, you will have to pass it into a client component as children or props. All right. That might sound a little confusing, but yeah, that's just listen to it again 2-3 times and it will strike you. So if this is a client component, now the difference between the two is that I cannot make this an asynchronous function anymore. See that objects are not valid as a React child, and it is returning an object of a promise. Basically, what it's saying is that my post, uh, my post component is a client component. You cannot say that it is a promise. So I need to remove this. And well, now I can't say await. I can't tell it to await the function for get post, right? It's returning a promise. How do I use it? For that, React enabled another feature called the use hook. And now you can call the use hook, which you can import from React and just wrap this function inside that. And now it will work the same way, but it seems to have an error still. Let's see. The dot comp inside this, like I said, you cannot pass a client component inside a server component. So this also needs to be, sorry, a server component inside a client component. So this also needs to be a client component. And now this will work. Refresh, still doesn't work. Why is this not working? If you're meant to render a collection, I didn't mean to render a collection. Obviously now I need to make the change here as well. So now this can't be an asynchronous function. I use the use hook with this. And let's import that from React and we should be good to go. Works. The only difference between the client component and the server component would be how you use it. Also, you should note that the NextJS docs just does tell you that where's that gone? They don't recommend you to use the use hook right now because it can cause multiple re-renders. So they recommend you to use something like SWR or React query. One second, where was that? Let's look for it. Client component, yeah. So use, you can, it accepts a promise and works very similar to await. You already saw how that works. You can learn more about it at the React RFC. I'll link it below in the docs, in the description. And they do say wrapping fetch and use is currently not recommended because it may trigger multiple re-renders. To use that, use different libraries such as SWR or React Query. SWR is by the Next.js team and React Query is by Tanstack. There's a person called Tanner who has multiple packages like Tanstack Query, Tanstack Table, wonderful developer and an open source contributor. The SWR is by Next.js, and you can just, the easiest way to use it, just use SWR and pass your API into it, and just you can look at the docs and how it works. Very easy to set up, and if you don't want to use the use hook, just end up using that. Now, we did look at the fact that well, inside my post, let's say I want to link my post to another page. All right, so I say something like post slash, let's say post ID. Look at the bottom of my screen, all right, slash post ID slash page.tsx. So I say that I want something like post slash, like the post ID which is being rendered. I think it might be one or two. This doesn't show keys, does it? Yeah. Anyways, my post ID. If I goes to localhost 3000 slash this, I want you to show well the contents of that particular post, for example. Now, how do I do that? It's just dynamic params inside the routes for Next.js 13. I won't go too deep into it because we're looking at data fetching and not dynamic params in this video. But if I go to defining routes and dynamic segments, it shows you how to do that. So I can just go into this. I can say export default function post. and not posts, right? I can say return a div which has the post title maybe. How do I get the post title? Let's not say this in a second. See the post title over here and say the post content over here. How do we do this? So if I just go to, I'll just show you this now. Post/1, for example, it will just show you that. And again, let's use enter on this because serif just blows my mind. How can anyone be using serif? I mean, works for some cases, doesn't work for most websites. Oh my god. Yep, so that, and let's just give it a class of enter.class. Alright, we should be using that. How do I get it over here? All I need to do is get, now this passes in your, the post ID as a param. So what it does is this passes in, if not this passes in params like this. Actually, it passes in params inside an object. It has all other options inside this which you can look into. But what this will look like, the params object will look something like well, post ID and the post ID over here. Alright, this is what this will look like. So if I want to destructure this further, I can just say that and I can get the post ID from the here. Now, obviously, you should be typing this if you're using TypeScript. Just say params post ID, which is a string. Right? Else it would have shown any. Now, I want to fetch my post from here. Well, I can show this post over here first. I can just say post ID is post ID, which will come in over here. And if I go to this one, this post ID is 1. Now let's try to link these posts from here. Let me just go to /post now. And let's say, well, you can do this inside the SSR post also, by the way. I'm just choosing the post because I wrote that first. I'll just link this next /link href is /post/ let's use plus post dot id. Let's wrap this in here and paste that there. Now if I hover over this, you can see that this is linked now. Let me just open this in a new tab and it's going to post /1. Works, right? Let me just close that. Let me close all my tabs over here. And let me open back page, post ID /page. Alright. I want to fetch this. Works very similar to how we were fetching before. Alright, let's just see how this works. Now let me just get the not export, not export. Once get post is equal to asynchronous. I want the ID to be passed in here. I'll just say ID, which is a string, and this returns the promise of the post. How do I do that? I can just say const res await fetch. JSON placeholder actually has an API for this as well. You can just go and call, let me copy paste this. You can go post, let me make this backticks. I think post/ID. This will give you the post now. I can say post, and I know for a fact that this would be post, but this is not post. Yeah, I do need to import this again. Alright, so now this will be, why is this not a post again? Yeah, this doesn't know it will be a post, just say as post if you want. It doesn't really make sense because if I say const post is equal to await get post, And for that, this needs to be an asynchronous function, by the way. So post will be a post. I can say post title. I can change this with post dot title, and I can change this with post dot content. What was it? Body? Yep, body. The power of typescript. I identify post has already been declared. What the? Uh, oh, this is post page over here because the post had already come in, and we have this post coming in over here. So this still works. This works pretty well. Now, if I just go to my network tab, look at the fact that it rendered 3 and 1 already because I've already opened those before. So if I go to this, it renders 9, yeah, right? It works on the basis of hovering over something. So it says it kind of prefetches that data, right? Now I'll show you one thing. Let me try building this, alright? This actually won't build because there's a server component being rendered inside my SSR post. Okay, that's fine. So look at this, alright? It says post/post ID. It's a server-side render, server-side rendered page. It server-side renders at runtime and uses get initial props and or get server-side props. Well, we know for a fact that SSR post is using get server-side props or well the no cache. But this it's saying that this is also rendering at runtime, and we know for a fact that this is using no cache. And look at slash post, alright? It's saying that that is static. But even shouldn't this be static as well? Well, no, because NextJS, when it is first loading the data, it doesn't know that this page exists, right? So for that, they have a function called generate what was it? Export on generate static params. I think just I forgot for a second what the name was. Generate, yep, generate static params. So what this does is you can call this inside your post ID slash page.tsx. You can say, and this needs you to return an object with of params. Well, this will need you to return something like params, which has all your post ID within this. So, well, this does my work for me, Copilot. I'll just explain this code. It gets the post like before. It says returns all the post ID of all these posts. So what this will return is something like this. It returns an object params which has this post ID 2, so on and so forth. It takes all that data and prefetches all that. And if I just, what happened now? Module not found. Let me restart this because I built that, so it might be looking at that cache for a second. Let me refresh this page now. See what happens now, right? So now if I try to build this, look at what happens. See this now, this has turned to a dark circle. It says SSG. Now this is static HTML. What happens is, now because NextJS already knows that these pages exist, it during build time, it looks at them and then renders that as HTML. It renders those as HTML and says that that is statically generated during build time. Now that is great. And what you can do is say that this is statically generated, right? But what if my post changes once in a while? All you need to do, this is a very easy technique with Next.js 13. Just say export cons revalidate and say that, well, 60 is, this is in seconds. You can say that say my post changes and I wanted to do it every hour. Every hour I wanted to revalidate in case that has changed. How much is 1 hour? 16 to 60, right? 60 times 60. Why is that not valid? Configuration must be. Oh my goodness. Okay. This is 3,600. Isn't it? Yeah, that's 1 hour. Okay. What it does is every single hour, it will just go and try to revalidate that. Why does this keep breaking? Oh, I tried building it again. Every single hour, it will just revalidate if this page has changed or not. And if it has changed, it will change this post. Another thing that this revalidate can be done on multiple levels. You can do this inside this page, you can add this inside the level, or you can also add this inside this fetch. So if you have multiple fetches and say you want revalidate only inside one fetch, you can just add it to that. So use the object as the second parameter again, say next, which is again an object, and you can say revalidate, it's say 3600. If you want it specific for that fetch, you can just add it over here. So that is all for data fetching inside NextJS 13. And it you can do most of what you were doing with the older versions now, but there are a few caveats here and there. Like you can't have SSD directly inside those pages. It doesn't support it directly. And well, the revalidate does something like ISR. And well, yeah, that's it for this video. I'll be coming back with a newer video. Stay tuned. And if you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Night.